Hi friends, hello. Today we're going to be discussing the most interesting recent immigration news, changed ICE policies, changed USCIS policies, and what Trump said about farm workers and hotel workers, hospitality workers. So please join me. My name is Alina Shaltsova. I'm a New York immigration lawyer. I've been practicing immigration law for 17 years at this point. And I use my social media to share with you different tips, news, and my thoughts on this or that happening in our immigration. And today we're going to be discussing very interesting information that actually, to some extent, is going to be relevant for every immigrant in the United States. So, welcome. Let me know where you're watching from. Say hello. And of course, type up your questions. In the end, I will be answering some of you guys' questions live. And let's start. I post every now and then on my social media short videos about different happenings that are going on in our immigration life throughout the week. And yesterday, I just posted a video about changed USCIS policy with regard to disclosure. I've noticed about a month and a half ago when I was receiving clients' files, we call it FOIA, Freedom of Information Act request files, that this time around, unlike in 2024, 2023, or for the past decade and a half, USCIS didn't share much information with me, even though they have the client's file. When I would receive the FOIA, I would see that more than half of person's information is blank and withheld under some sort of a citation, under some sort of law. I was very surprised. I thought, well, maybe it's an occasional situation. And yesterday, we received an update from USCIS where they stated that they changed the policy as to disclosure, and they're no longer going to share all the available information. They stated that, if we plan to rely on derogatory information that the benefit requester is unaware of, we will generally provide a detailed description, but not necessarily. If they plan to rely on it, but if they plan not to rely on it directly, but keep to themselves and make their conclusions on some other information, they stated, they will not be disclosing information that may be classified, sensitive, privileged, or otherwise subject to statutory protection, and in other limited circumstances, such as when the information is provided in a third-party record or is subject to disclosure limitations, they will not be sharing it. So what started happening, so you just understand, they stopped disclosing your own files to you if they say that some of the information, a portion of the information on that page is sensitive, privileged, otherwise not recommended to be disclosed. And what is really happening is this. For example, you had a marriage-based case. You submitted adjustment of status package. And now, years later, you would like to file for VAWA, or you would like to file for a new marriage-based case, and you would like to have a copy of what you submitted before. Guess what? Much of that file is going to be not disclosed. They're not going to give it to you. I started seeing it already where all the joint information, joint documents, they don't disclose. They provide to you blank pages. They give you redacted form I-45, heavily redacted form I-130 that could have been filed by your spouse, and pretty much the rest of it is empty pages. It means that you have to now keep your file, ask people who helped you to file the documents to give you copies. And if you didn't keep the files, if you do not know where those people are who helped you to file the documents, your situation will be difficult, right? Because that's where we're at. Also, I've noticed that for asylum client, they did not disclose asylum interview notes, even though I know that AILA, American Immigration Lawyers Association, previously fought hard for USCIS to start disclosing that information. And maybe there was some sort of a lawsuit about this as well. The situation gets very interesting where you have to now remember what was in your file or get the file from your previous attorney, or you're going to be fighting that fight blindfolded. You will not know what's in your file. And if there is a derogatory information in the file that they just have and potentially use against you, they will not give it to you. So just understand that it's becoming harder and harder and harder to win those cases, right? Now, did ICE go too far with the enforcement? We see some wild news from New Jersey. Newark immigration facility had something almost like a riot or something in the jail where they're keeping immigration detainees. They revolted, and from what I understand, it was connected to food, the way they're being fed. And then there was some kind of a wall in the facility that they were able to just push. And guess what happened? Four people escaped. I do not know if they were apprehended yet, but this situation is getting out of control. There is so much tension, there is so much unrest that it has to be calmer, all right, for all of us, because it becomes just too much to bear. And apparently, even President Trump stated that in certain situations, the government at this point has to reverse its course and rather than enforcing mass deportations, provide some immigration relief, which is absolutely great to hear, finally, right? It took just 4 months of craziness to finally come to the conclusion that we need immigration reform more than anything else. He gave a speech at some gathering where he mentioned that farmers are being hurt tremendously because they're deporting wrong people. Duh. And hotel workers, hospitality workers. And I hope that Republicans are going to listen to him because it seems that they're listening to him. And I hope that they will be seriously working on some sort of a act to provide to these hardworking people, at least this group of people, at least somebody, okay, some opportunity to get green cards. And this is, of course, all happening as we see that ICE arresting more and more people. They're issuing these NTAs to everybody who gets denials. So it's like a very difficult time. Hey, listen, if Trump says that he wants to change something, I truly hope that ICE, Department of Homeland Security, USCIS, all these agencies are going to really focus now on trying to really change that and reward, or how to say, give an outlet to all these hardworking people who for decades supported the United States economy. Because not all immigrants are bad. Majority of immigrants are hardworking people. And the entire industries are being hurt by thoughtless policies that don't benefit the United States. They don't benefit anyone. So we're going to see what's going to happen, right? Couple of more updates before I'm going to start answering your guys' questions. In addition to disclosure policy, USCIS also changed, pay attention, medical exam policy. They stated that if you used medical exam once for a benefit, which could have been not granted, denied, or your application was administratively closed, subsequently you will have to produce a new medical exam. Very important, right? So if they ask you for a medical exam, even though you submitted the medical exam before, please don't fight. Just give them new medical. I beg you. There are some people who's like, oh, I already provided the medical exam. It's nothing in a large picture of your status. So just give it to them. And one more thing. For those of you who believe that the English is not strong enough and you cannot learn it due to disability, Trump's administration announced that they will be stricter with those medical waivers for citizenship. All right. For decades they were trying to like make it very hard for somebody who doesn't speak English to receive citizenship, and now it's going to be even harder. They issued this update new policy that they will be watching out for fraudulent waivers, they're going to be watching out for fraudulent information, and so on and so forth. So just keep in mind, it's always better to know English. Your life's going to be so much easier. But I understand that not everyone physically can do it, especially as we get older. The memory may suffer due to various conditions and from traumas, physical traumas, emotional traumas. Sometimes a person simply cannot learn. But this has to be very well documented by a treating physician, a doctor, a neurologist, and of course, psychiatrist. So just know of this changed policies. All right. And now we're going to go move on to fun stuff. I'm going to be answering your guys' questions. So please let me know where you're watching from and prepare your questions, and we're going to start. Hi, Bright from Ghana. Hi, Mr. Patel. Hi, Mr. Hussein. Hi, Mohammed. How long do you need for I-601A approval? Hey, thank you for your question. We actually just received a couple of I-601A approvals. One was very dear to me because person came and they stated that they previously filed I-601A waiver with a different attorney, and they received this error fee asking for everything, like hardship proof, even proof that they're married, and this and that. And I was like, wait, let me see what's going on. And basically, what was going on is that the file was empty. There was nothing there. The lawyer took the money. It wasn't a large amount of money, but they didn't do anything. And they didn't meet with a client to talk about hardships. They didn't take the time to understand what this couple is going through. And once we were hired, we were able to shape up the file within like very limited amount of time. And within less than 30 days, like it was 20, so I think they received it on the 20th of May, our answer. And to like 2 days ago, the I-601A was approved. And I was so, so happy for them, because this I-601A waiver now is pretty much the only way somebody who entered the United States without inspection may fix their status without the deportation. So it's extremely important to prepare this application well and do a great job. And this case was pending altogether for about 2 years. All right. We were able to resolve it in like 20 days, but it was filed back in 2023. So it takes about 2 years for I-601A to come to the stage where USCIS is considering it, okay, when they're reviewing it actively. That's how long it takes. All right. Let's see. Hi, Ginger Mare. My asylum case was dismissed by the judge, and my new lawyer says that I need documents from court on what happened to my case. Do I ask my old lawyer for it or the court I'm filing I-130? Absolutely. If the case was dismissed recently, your lawyer has an obligation to keep copies of the file for 7 years, actually, after the case was, after you stopped working with the attorney. So if it was dismissed recently, the attorney should have copies of the files. Unless some sort of a disaster happened, they should be able to provide you what you're looking for very quickly. Otherwise, you will have to ask the court for the records, and it may take significant amount of time. All right? May take significant amount of time. Hi, why? Hope all hardworking people who paying taxes for a long time will be given the permission to stay and eventually become a citizen. Listen, I hope so too. I hope so too, because hardworking people deserve status. And honestly, the United States economy is going to suffer. The United States citizens are going to suffer. The United States businesses are going to suffer if we all of a sudden just uproot this hundreds of thousands of people who were building the United States all this time. It just doesn't make any sense. And remember, whenever there was a major, major immigration reform, it was always passed by Republicans. Well, now I'm just trying to suck up to them. Yes, I'll do anything for the immigration reform. Come on, they can be the heroes. They don't have to be the villains. They can come together and say, you know what? we see where the problem is, and we're going to get together and truly, for the sake of the United States, we're going to resolve it, to try to resolve it. Why not to do that? Come on, don't they want to be reelected for like the next 100 years? So that's what they should do. Hi, Melissa. Thank you very much for your gift. Let me answer some questions from TikTok. Let's see. Thank you guys for joining. Thank you for your questions. Let's see. Thank you for sharing. Thank you very much for sharing the videos. Don't forget to follow so we could meet again. Hi, life goes on. Can I apply for an extension in the visitor's visa status? You should be able to do so with strong evidence that you are truly a non immigrant and you will be returning back to your home country after this extension period expires. And you have money to support yourself in the United States. It's very important. Okay. Hi, Rugmal. Please, is K1 visa included in the new travel restrictions? Yes, actually. When I was nowhere it said that it would be a fiance. Again, maybe I misunderstood, but I'm afraid that you will have to get married to make your application stronger. It's very important, okay? Very important that you realize that. And just check it again with an attorney. I don't know what's happening with your file. If your case is pending, you filed it, you're trying to file. If you haven't filed your case and you're trying to file it, remember, it's always better to file for a spouse rather than for your fiance, okay? Because just for a variety of reasons and the way the immigration laws work, your application is always stronger when you file for a spouse. Hi, user 907. I'm at risk. Am I at risk if I apply after 1 year deadline for asylum, almost 10 years pending? All right, so guys, you can still qualify for asylum even if you missed your 1 year deadline, but you have to meet certain exceptions. Country conditions changed, your personal circumstances changed, or there was something preventing you to file, or you were, for example, you were in lawful status that you lost, right? So if you qualify for that exception, you still may win asylum. Otherwise, it will be withholding or removal. All right. Let's see. Do we have more questions? Can an asylum seeker make changes of status to F4 while his petition date became current if in court? Not likely. Not likely, unfortunately, just because asylum pending is not lawful non-immigrant status that allows you to do so. Hi, Franca filed I-130 and 485 for my parents in March of 2023. Mom received a green card, right? But dad's I-130 is pending. Franca, did your dad ever had a problem with a previous marriage that he filed with someone and like he filed for green card based on marriage, but the application didn't go through? Otherwise, there is no reason for that I-130 to be pending for such a long time. All right. Hi, Melissa. I'm trying to get my husband here from Russia. All right. Listen, it's hard but possible. Okay. What's happening with Russia specifically is that they don't have a U.S. consulate, and you will have to make these arrangements for visa appointment somewhere else. Usually, people go to Turkey, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, or Georgia, depending on the location and where they can travel, but it's entirely possible. All right, even though it's going to be longer than usually for a person who doesn't have this issue, whose embassy is working. Yes, it's going to be tough, but it's possible. All right, let's see if we have more questions. Hi, Melissa. They need to fix the procedure for visa applicants. It takes too long. It does take too long. I absolutely agree with you. I know that President Trump discussed that they would like to reopen the consulates. But with everything that's going on in the world, I see that they stopped talking about it. Maybe we just do not know what they're discussing. but there were no public announcements about any progress in that direction, unfortunately. Unfortunately. Well, we'll see. Maybe it will change. Hi, Melissa. I'm in Virginia. Where are you from? Well, I am located in New York. I do help people in all 50 states, and I was born in Belarus. It's a small country between everybody who's fighting. The Russia, Ukraine, Lithuania, Latvia, and there is a small country of Belarus in between. It's tiny. Hi, Ortigo. I had an interview last year ago, and now I get message. My case returned to NVC. Ooh. All right, Ortigo. If your case returned to NVC, it most likely means that U.S. consular officer decided that your I-130 shouldn't have been approved. All right, and I'm just guessing here. It's not a big deal if you have a real relationship. Why? Because you will have to resubmit the evidence that you still stay in contact with your petitioner and you have this real relationship, but it's going to take some time for the USCIS to issue notice to you to get more evidence to them, and it's just going to be slow. All right. Hi, Jack. How long motion to terminate takes in New York City? I don't know if it's going to be granted. I'll be honest. Um, it depends on the judge. Any motion before the court, it really depends on the judge. It may take as short as 30 days to get the response, and it may take years to hear back from them. So it really depends on the judge, you know. But most judges in New York are pretty good. I'm going to tell you that. All right. Hi, Miriam. N400 interviewed on May 1st. Under decision, live agent said no issue. We don't need anything. It's not too long ago. Hopefully, it will be granted in no time. Don't worry. Can one apply for citizenship while owing taxes from 2024? I just received a notice. Only if you have a payment plan. Just like freaked out a little bit because I think my life interrupted it. I don't know if it's true or not, but we'll see. So you will have to have a payment plan. If you don't have a payment plan, then they will not approve your citizenship. All right, so have a payment plan if that's what happens, and we'll see where it's going to get you. Work with an attorney. All right, have everything in check, and you'll be fine. Okay, let's see what's going on. TikTok never loses connection. Why other things lose connections like Facebook or YouTube always have issues with them? Hi Ron, I haven't received VAWA receipt notice. Oh yes, after 70 days, send my case to Nebraska. What do I do? All you can do is you have to wait. There is a big issue with getting receipts, even for simplest cases, and especially for VAWA cases. You will have to be patient. At some point, I was pressured by a client. He was like, "Where is my receipt?" Everybody says it has to be 2 weeks, and it used to be 2 weeks. So I refiled the case, right? Because I was like, I don't know what's happening. He's right. Like, what happened? But after I received receipts 3 months later, I realized that it takes a normally long time these days to get the receipts. So I stopped refiling and I just tell clients, you have to just sit and wait. All right. Hopefully, you're going to get your receipts at some point. But always submit everything to USCIS with tracking, because at least you can prove that you filed something, all right, and it was delivered to somewhere. Because I'm missing some receipts now, but I do have trackings. It will help me to follow up with them and say, hey, listen, where are those receipts? Where did it all go? All right. Hi, Simran. My EOIR case status suddenly disappeared. My court hearing date final. It was next month. So you were supposed to have your hearing next month, and now it's off the calendar. Well, it happens sometimes. A lot of cases in New York, it started happening too. Why? Because I think what's happening is that the judges must have hearings now in person. And I started receiving these reschedule notices where hearings that were internet based for this year are now noted as in person for like 2028, 2029. And I was like, whoa, but there is really nothing you can do about it. All right. So that's what's happening. Hi, El Said. I have a green card through marriage. Can I travel? And when can I remove the conditions? Of course, you can travel. If you didn't have any fraud, any issues, or anything, yes, you can travel. When can you remove conditions? Jointly, within 90 days of the second anniversary printed on your green card. Resident since. All right? That's when you can do it. All right, let's see. I haven't received yes. Well, receipts, I spoke about that. Hi, Philip. If my friend was brought over illegally from Mexico, she was 7. They crossed back when she was 9. Okay. What happened? Then they brought her back second time. All right. So somebody shuttled back and forth when they were a kid. They shouldn't be subject to permanent bar because what happens with the shuttling back and forth, you become subject to permanent bar if you spend, if you accumulated unlawful presence time of more than a year in the United States, you went back and then you re-entered illegally. However, a child who is under 18 years old is not accumulating unlawful presence in the United States, even if they entered without inspection or even if they overstayed their visa. That's good for the kid, right? Now, if somebody entered back with authorization, sometimes they file for the visa and consulate officer just approves it, or they were paroled back into the United States, then they also not subject to permanent bar. That's how it used to be. We'll see what's going to happen now, but that was the law, all right? So your friend who was shuttled back and forth when they were a kid shouldn't be subject to any bars with regard to this unlawful presence situation, all right? Now, maybe when they became an adult, they started accumulating unlawful presence. I do not know, but back then they should be fine. Hi, Billy. ICE keeps giving me hassle to bring my passport, which from day one I told the office I don't have. And I said, my next appointment, I must bring it. What should I do? Well, what you should do is you should show them a paper that you tried to apply for the passport and your consulate stated that they're not going to give it to you. That's what you should do. That's what they're going to ask you to do next. They will force you to file for the passport. All right? Hi, Salah. Can I apply for adjustment of status on pending asylum for DV winner? Usually not. You will not be able to, unfortunately. Hi, Betsy. Asking for a family member. Is it true COVID-19 vaccine no longer required to apply for a green card? It is absolutely true. COVID vaccine is no longer required when you file for the green card. Isn't that a good news? I know. Listen, it's a great news, I think. Hi, Sherry Hunter. An asylum seeker pending came in August 2023 with a visa. Should I be worried about deportation? With a visa, you came in and you've been in the country for less than 2 years, but you entered with a visa. You should not be subject to expedited removal. Okay, who they're placing, who ICE is trying to, and DHS trying to place in expedited removal. Those who entered without inspection and spent less than 2 years in the United States, and those who entered on parole, regardless of how long ago they entered. I quite don't understand why, because under the law, from what I understand, if you entered on parole, and that's how it always been, you entered with authorization, you entered legally, so you shouldn't be subject to this 2 year, to the expedited removal if you spend more than 2 years in the United States. Something is like there is a disconnect of some sort now. So that's what's happening. What can I do? I can only confide for my clients, which I do every day. Thankfully, we haven't had any such situations yet where we have to address this particular point. I had a client who went for ICE check-in, safely returned, everything was fine. Um, there was a situation in court recently where we had to really, I say to my clients, sometimes you go somewhere and it feels like you didn't need a lawyer. Everything went smoothly and everything was great. And sometimes you go with a client and I tell them, well, today you needed a lawyer. So this week, one of my clients needed a lawyer because it was just a very strange situation where they were misinformed as to the mode of their hearing by the government. And the judge almost got them deported. But, they have a lawyer. So we were able to explain the situation and advocate for them, and everything seems to have been resolved. But those people who didn't have a lawyer, I feel bad for them. I feel terrible for them. Because I think because of this misinformation that was on the government website, they got deported that day. And it's really, really bad. Really, really bad. Would a parent be subjected to a ban if a US citizen filed for a parent who overstayed? No, they shouldn't. Under the law, if you have a US citizen, adult child who's sponsoring you, parent who overstayed, right? What's supposed to happen is that the parent still qualifies for a green card. They shouldn't be banned from getting green card just because they overstayed, because the parent is considered to be now an immediate relative. All right. Now, guys, I'm going to answer one last question. All right. And we're going to see each other again next week. Hopefully, everything will be fine with all of us. So don't forget to follow so that we're not going to get lost. Let's see. Hi, Monique. What is a typical time frame for a minor child if filed by a US citizen from within the United States as a step parent? And will the child be required to go to the interview? Monique, interestingly enough, minor children often are requested to appear for an interview. Sometimes a kid as young as 2 years old may be called for an interview because it happened in one of my cases. It's not a big deal. You're just going to go with a kid and just tell them not to be scared, they will be fine. It takes about a year usually to go through the steps, all right? But if you are called with a kid for the interview, you're going to appear. What would be the reason why they would call you and the child? Well, to make sure that you do have this bond, step parent, step child bond, all right? That you basically a true family. That's what it is. But yeah, sometimes very young kids are called for the interview, guys. Well, if the result is an approval, in the end, it's not going to matter. So if you can, bring an attorney with you so that lawyer will watch out for your rights and make sure that everything goes according to the law. Okay. Well, guys, thank you very much for connecting today. Thank you for your questions. I truly appreciate your support. Sharing, liking these videos means a lot to me. Please don't forget to follow so that we can meet again. We can discuss interesting immigration news, different developments. Throughout the week, I post various important news that are happening in our life. Now every day there is a new announcement, and you need to stay on top of that if you are an immigrant or you have an immigrant in your family or you have a friend who's an immigrant, to understand what's happening. I hope that everybody is going to be safe this weekend, and I hope to see you guys soon.